Very, very big question to start here, but one of my absolute favorite things about adapting source material is you want to do it justice, but it also gives you an opportunity to evolve it and bring your own voice to it. So when this opportunity came your way, what was something about, your storytelling skill set that made you think to yourself, like, I have something to add to the Dune franchise via my own unique voice?
Oh, that's so interesting. Well, in a basic sense, I think, to be a genre writer, you live to sort of interface with a property like Dune. I mean, it's so endlessly rich and vivid and layer and complex, and the characters are amazing and the world building is amazing. So I could go on and on about sort of, I hope that all the work I've done has prepared me to sink my teeth into Dune in a way that is enjoyable for the audience. That all the work I've done trying to put relatable human beings in fantastical worlds kind of pays off in this moment, because you couldn't have a better template to be working in.
Relatable human beings in fantastical world. Isn't that kind of what it's all about?
It's
to make you feel like you're in there right along with them.
Yeah, and I feel like that you can go on to the strangest of places, or even the most complex of places. But if you have characters you care about, and you really understand what they're doing or thinking, or are intrigued at least, you can be pulled along in a way that I think is obviously the power of storytelling.
Speaking of those characters, you have many key characters, and I was wondering what it was like for you in the development phases to figure out the right assortment, like how many houses you wanted to represent, how many members of the Sisterhood we needed. Was there any trial and error in terms of picking the right characters to focus on?
I mean, absolutely. The story went through iteration, and like every show goes through, there's a time when you have more ideas than you could possibly service, and you have to make choices. So yes, certain things would be like, well, maybe not this season, or maybe we hold that, or maybe we don't need 3 of these characters. We just need like 2, or, there's ways that you're pruning. But I will say the core, like the idea that we were going to service an imperial family, that we were going to see the great houses and the sense of politics, that the Sisterhood had to have its own world and be its own organization, that we were going to follow both the leaders of the Sisterhood when they were young students, but also see the young students who they're training, who will, as the series, we are so lucky to continue, how to grow those characters over time. Like, everybody is there for a reason. Everybody represents an arm of the Sisterhood. There's the more overt, public facing. We have jobs. We advise leaders. And then there's the more covert. We're also spies. And so, different characters occupy different, sort of represent different aspects of our Sisterhood.
So many follow-up questions. The first one that I needed to ask, so when you go into the writing phase, which particular character were you most excited to flesh out? But then also, can you tell me which character wound up being more creatively fulfilling to craft a season-long arc for than you ever could have imagined at the start?
Well, okay, so caveat that I love all my characters.
That is very fair.
And every one of them requires that, because I do think Dune, even if you're not telling a massive story, I feel like every character you could. And that's what I wanted them to be alive enough, specific enough that even if we were only going to peel back one little layer, but you could, and I mean that from like the smallest roles are there kind of doing world building work that's very interesting. I love the Harkonnen sisters. I think they're the sort of beating heart of the show. But I would say the character that sort of leapt to life in a fun way was Harrow Harkonnen, who is, doesn't even come in a big way until episode 4, really. But by the end, I just find myself enjoying him so much. I don't know. That's a small surprise.
I like that example there. So now taking a step forward in the process to casting, surprise, surprise, I got another two-part question. Of all the key characters in the show, which was the easiest to cast, where it was like the right person just magically appeared? But then on the other hand, which character took the most legwork to find the perfect fit for?
You know, I'm very intuitive when it comes to casting, and so I do have an I know when I know kind of thing. And some people, they really... And I wait for that feeling, you know, because so many characters locked in a very obvious way. So Chloe Lee, who plays Sister Lila, just immediately apparent to me that was who we should be going for. And I think she's a phenomenal talent. I hope she breaks in a huge way. I think she's stunning. But I feel that way about all our acolytes, actually. I think they're all amazing. And Jessica Barden as young Emily
She's
Watson.
always a favorite for me.
I adore her, and also felt that it was just undeniable. Like, it was just like, okay, like, and also she had such a tall order, you know, because she almost has to come in and same with Emma Canning, who plays young Tula, and those young acolytes, Yaren Ha and Charithra Chandran. I always felt like if we had to tell a story just in that group, that would be a great show. But also we have this other group in the present. So I mean, a blessing of, riches.
Bringing that up, it did cross my mind. What was it like figuring out the right story structure for the season in terms of, I mean, I'm not saying this properly, but just to get it across quickly and clearly, jumping from the past to the present in the show versus, let's say, I guess using the House of the Dragon model that we just saw and starting with just the younger ensemble and then eventually doing a time jump to the older one.
Oh, yeah, which was very interesting and I hadn't seen. I think for me, Dune is very much a story where the past is alive in the present and it's shaping the future, and all those things are speaking to each other. And so I really do want to, and I mean, continue to sort of toggle between sort of points where decisions were put in play and who were people then versus now they're playing out, and who are people now, and what time does to people and to plans over time. And so I think that's all really interesting. I don't know, just to texture to the show, I think.
It's especially effective in episode 3.
Oh, I know,
I was
right?
very impressed by how well that one was done. I'm going to inch a little further into the process now to production and specifically figuring out the right visual language for the show. What is something that Denis and Greg Fraser did in the films that you knew you needed to uphold to make sure it all feels cohesive? But then also, can you pinpoint some things about your visuals that you wanted to do to make sure we could feel that like this is a completely different period of time?
Yeah. Well, I mean, the artistry of the films of Denis Villeneuve and Greg Fraser, I mean, such an outstanding and inspiring and high bar to set. And so we appreciate that as artists. So we too wanted to create a world that felt immersive, that felt specific, that had spectacle, that allowed... Because, you know, I do think this also speaks to Dune, like the ecology of Dune and the nature of Dune and like, it really does transport you, and it should. And we wanted our show to transport you as much as the films do. And, you know, even though we're a different animal, you know, we had incredible artists who were our directors and our visual effects team and our production designer, and all were huge Dune fans. And that's the other thing I think that I've heard Denis speak of that I think we had too, which was just a bunch of people who loved what they were doing and felt like they were working on a special project. I would say what's been fun is that we don't set our story on Arrakis. So how do we maintain that bar, but take you to totally different planets where we're making brand new aesthetic decisions about like, what is Seleucus Secundus and what does Lanka Vale look like? And, you know, I don't know if this will be spoiler or other planets.
If it is, we'll brand it appropriately.
Okay. You know, the other planets we go to. But, you know, just that idea that that's a whole new set of aesthetic choices. And, I think that's the thing about Dune that makes it tricky, but also makes it exciting is like you have just so many choices to make.
The ambition with all the locations you have here is something else. Of all of the key locations and the enormous set builds that you had, which did you think was going to be the most difficult to pull off? And ultimately, was it, or did a different location catch you by surprise?
Yeah, that's interesting. What I think was the most difficult to pull off. Okay, this is probably not a good answer based on that question, but like, honestly, I had people I was working with and some who I had worked with before on Westworld who I just had such high confidence that we were going to be able to find what we needed. It was always a question of like, when? So it was like, well, when is the location going to reveal itself to us? Kind of a thing. And they have, and everybody just had that ambition, had that sense of like they were going to reach the degree of difficulty, didn't scare them per se. It was like we were going to realize something great. And we really set out to do that every day. But then there were things like we would be faced with like the Hungarian winter or something, which is very real and very intense. But we happened to be shooting our Lankavale scenes, which was our ice planet. And like, that's the kind of sort of suffering for your art on the one hand, but that also is like so unbelievable as you're out there in the cold with your hand warmers and your feet warmers. But you're looking at what's on the monitor and the sky is laden in the heaviest gray and the light is stunning and it starts to snow for real and you're filming a scene and like that's movie magic. So we got lucky and I felt like it's like you make your own luck. You just go for it and go for it and go for it. And then sometimes when the universe meets you, and you just can't believe the footage you're getting.
I love moments like that. It is meant to be.
Yeah.
This might seem like a teeny tiny detail, but I get really hung up on show titles. And I know at a point you switched your title from Dune the Sisterhood to Dune Prophecy. Now that we're kind of digging into the story, can you explain why that shift felt like it better reflected the show that you made?
I think look, the sisterhood is very much our point of origin. And like, and I think that there was a time that title was very grounding and orienting to the show because we are still explaining it as this is the story of the origin of the Bene Gesserit. But I do feel like it is also set in a fully realized world where it is involving the great houses and the Imperium and the Emperor and the, eventually over time, there are the other schools, there's the Mentats, there's the Spacing Guild. Like there's so much to the world that I don't think we wanted to artificially narrow it in the title ultimately. And in some ways, Dune Prophecy is both very representative of the sisterhood because they're going to obviously put in play a prophecy that's going to bring about Paul Atreides and, it's very much who they are. But I think also it kind of has a bit more of a broad sort of, it allows anyone in the Imperium to relate to it. What we believe in, what we don't, what stories we're going to tell, who we're going to elevate with those stories. I think Dune Prophecy is thematically also very true to the show.
Totally makes sense. I wanted to make sure to end with this particular question, and I'll preface it by saying you work with a wonderful team here, and everybody's work is very, very important. But I find that nobody in this business tells themselves good job. And you're showrunning an incredibly ambitious production here with lore that a lot of people out there care deeply about. So can you tell me something you accomplished making Dune Prophecy that you'll always be able to look back on and say, you know what? I'm really proud of what I did there.
Oh, it's a nice question. I would say, honestly, it's a little bit what you said is the answers in your question, which is, it is the people. Like it is inspiring and creating an environment where people can do their best work and where they feel invested in the work that they're doing and seen, and that their extra efforts they're going to, or when you're going to go back and maybe try it again for the fourth time or the fifth time, or, this desire to dig as deep as and not stop until we have to, making it good. That ethos is something I really try and embody from the top. And I also love that energy coming back at me. And I'm proud of the team that I've worked with and the collaboration, because you can't mount this kind of a production without an army of people kind of doing their best work.
I love that mentality. Every showrunner should be gunning for that same goal there. It's so important.
Yeah.
I'll say huge congratulations on Dune Prophecy, and thank you for your time today.
Thank you so much. What a pleasure.